talking about those liminal spaces in between. Would that not be potentially just the next chapter as well, too, in a way, even if it doesn't feel like it?
I think that's exactly what I was trying to say with that little story of my interlude there. Like, I think sometimes when I look back, I'm like, oh, I had my period when I was a pastor, and then I flipped and I tried it again. But the reality was that liminal space was hugely important for me. It shaped who I was. And so I think you're exactly right, that we shouldn't look at those moments as just a page flip. We should look back and say, oh, a lot was changing there. I was waiting, but maybe I was waiting very actively. I was becoming something new. So I think you're absolutely hitting on something really important, something I forget when I look back and I have to remind myself sometimes. So thanks for that, Bobby.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a both and. Like, sometimes we really are just moving from one thing to the next. And sometimes the thing between the next and the thing you left is offering more of a lesson. I have read the Bible a lot, and as I was thinking about this story tonight, a different interpretation appeared in the break again. And I hadn't thought about this, but I thought, what if, it's so interesting that right between chapter 11 and chapter 12, Tara dies. Dad is dead. And then immediately in 12, the Lord speaks. And I was like, what if Tara was a really bad dad? And he couldn't hear any other fatherly voice. Abraham couldn't hear any other fatherly voice except his bad dad. And then the man is dead. And all of a sudden, the voice of life speaks. Like, what if? And I hadn't ever thought about that, and it was in the gap. It's profound. And I think we get to read our lives like that. Maybe you're going by the gap and you think there's nothing there. And 10 years later, you look back and from the gap, there is something you needed to see and interact with in your own life. So beware the gap.
Cool. Take one up here.
Life there.
I know this question isn't answered in the scripture, in the account, but how do you think Abraham became sure enough that God was speaking to him to make such an epic change?
Well, you're right. It's not answered for us. But what I would say is I don't know that there's anything like being sure. I think sometimes there's that gut instinct, there's that feeling. I think for all of us, it's slightly different. I've made some big choices in my life. I've moved across the country. I planted a church. We're doing something incredible now, trying again in Marda Loop. I don't know that I've ever been sure about those things, but I had a sense that I was ready to try. And one of the things that I think myself, when I think about taking risks, is I have this little rubric that I filter things through. Talked about this at the congregational meeting on Thursday night. But I try to ask myself two questions. I want to take risks that are big enough I'll know I failed. So I don't want to make, challenges for myself and then get to the end of it and be like, did I succeed at that or not? Because that means I haven't shot big enough. So I want to know if I failed. But I also never want to bet the farm. And to me, that means I take in all of my responsibilities and I figure out what am I willing to risk right now? When I was in my 20s, I was willing to risk a lot. When I got married, I was willing to risk quite a bit, but not quite as much. Now I have kids and that changes things. But it still means, even at 40 some years, I'm still wanting to challenge myself to take a risk. And I want to know if I failed at the end of that. But it's never about being sure. It's always about saying there's opportunity in front of me. This looks interesting. I think God has equipped me for this, and I'm going to give it a shot. And some things I look and I'm like, well, that's too big. It's not for me. Not at this stage of my life. And I let it go. And other things I'm like, I'm going to jump at it. But certainty, I don't know that's ever been part of my life anyway. Bobby, what do you think?
Well, I feel sure. Yeah, I feel it is interesting because I can think about very similar situations where it was a lot of weighing, a lot of talking to friends, floating ideas past other people, considering the opportunity before me, and then thinking, well, I don't know if this is the way, but I'm gonna go in it and turning it into the way, maybe. But I do think there have been moments in my life where something truthful took on another kind of glow. And I can't manufacture that. I can't will it. But I think this is what it means to build a life, is to be open and to be practiced at how a moment may come out of nowhere and you think, yes, like this is the true thing for me. And I can think of moments where my life changed because something felt like highlighted, like extra glowy, but most of the time I do think it's about just listening to my life and trying to make a good and wise and healthy choice for me and the people around me.